Footy Corner.
Hello, friends, and welcome to the first episode in, almost 2 years here for Canadian Footy Corner. I'm your host, Pierce Lang, and I'm joined, as always, by John Peckett. John, how the heck are you today?
Oh, fantastic. Better now, of course. How about yourself?
I'm doing fabulous, thank you. I think all pleasantries aside, we should really get this show on the road. So I think first off, let's do a quick little Canadian Premier League roundup of the big news over the last couple of days, and we can get right into it. So for me, I noticed the coaching hire of Alejandro Dorado, who's come over with a ton of experience, having worked with Rafa Benitez. He was with him in China, but he's also been with Real Madrid's academy, where he was an academy coach. He's got experience with the Spanish FA. For anyone who's listening to this or watching this who wants to hear a really good interview, his agent was actually on the Down the Pub podcast, which is a really good Wanderers podcast for anyone who's out there, which really provided some really good insight. It sounds like a really good hire, but I know you were curious about who they had just signed to play for them.
Well, yes, they just yesterday, as of day of recording, they signed Aiden Daniels, who any TFC fan might be familiar with from his time with the. I think he made it to TFC 2. I don't think he ever did. He get a homegrown contract?
I don't believe so, but yeah, I don't think he ever
wore
the captain's armband briefly for TFC.
Well, he was a name that I figured he was kind of on his way, right, to TFC, and then never quite panned out that way. But it's an interesting sign, especially with some of this. I guess we'll get to that conversation about like this whole MLS Pro, but like one coming the other way back up because he had been playing in USL before that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice to get one back. I'm just checking right now who he was just with.
Because we do our research on this show. That's the thing people need to remember.
He's with Oklahoma. Yeah, Oklahoma City. But yeah, he it looks like, yeah. Oh, he did make it. It says he did make an MLS appearance, so maybe he did get a homegrown contract there, but only got one game in.
Either way, he's joining the roster at Halifax. Provides a bit of experience that they wouldn't normally get with a Canadian player.
He makes them better. So
should do. They did finish in 6th, which isn't great considering they finished 2nd the year before. Right?
Yeah, they fell off.
A team that's worse than them is Atletico Ottawa. So that's a positive. Atletico Ottawa still without a coach somehow.
Yeah, there was some rumors swirling around that Mark Dos Santos was going to go back to Ottawa, but he came on to I didn't see which podcast that was. He shot it down himself though, so that's not happening. Yeah. I'm not sure. I haven't seen anything there. I don't know who they're, but like maybe they announce it tonight at the draft.
Could do. That would be exciting, and we'll be providing a bit of coverage after the draft here. We'll record the last session of this pod to review that. We're also going to talk to TSS Rovers and the Spirit of the Rovers fan trust about what my ownership of this club really means. Because I'm going to try and overthrow the board. First task of action to be taken.
Stage a coup.
Yeah, a mutiny, if you will. If you get
move the club to Ontario. Oh
no, keep them there. But so sticking with Ottawa though, Ottawa no coach right now, but also I was listening to another podcast, the Capital City Supporters Group. And it seems like there's a lot of concern. Actually, this was just a Twitter space I was listening to. I was engaging with those fellas. Great work by them, by the way. That there's a bit of distrust growing towards ownership about just how they're engaging with the community, which isn't surprising because we've seen this with a couple of the CPL teams where they haven't figured out the marketing end of how to get people in the door. They kind of, as they put it yesterday, are sticking to this North American idea of like having big one-off events, which get people in once, but they never really come back.
Is there a disconnect? Like, because with the Atletico like ownership, is there a disconnect from from there, or is that where, like, at what stage is this problem stemming from?
It's no one's 100% sure on where
Mm.
to put their finger on it, from what I understand. But we'll have to get one of those young men on the show to chat with us about that. Moving from there, York United
Mm-hmm.
just announced that Martin Nash is joining the staff there as the head coach, which I think is a great appointment. He
Oh yeah.
obviously was the captain of the Whitecaps before they moved to MLS, and he surprisingly retired just before the Whitecaps joined MLS, which raised a lot of eyebrows, especially considering, like, man, his brother is one of the owners of the team. Like, it was almost a gimme that he would have been able to play. Maybe we can talk to him about why, if he ever really regretted that decision. But as soon as he comes in, Paul Stalteri leaves to join TFC.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, we'll have to figure out what's going on there.
Yeah, because you would have thought Stalteri would have been like one of the candidates, but maybe not. But Martin Nash coming in, and then they've been making a few moves. They've got a couple of young guys coming from Europe, so I'm interested to see kind of how Nash kind of puts his mold on the squad, because he's still got a lot of the key guys there, but they've actually made quite a few signings recently, more active than a lot of the other teams.
He's got a lot of connections within the, not so much the local community, but within Canada, because he has been an assistant not just with Cavalry, but with Ottawa Fury before that. So he knows people, he knows coaches. He's done it the right way. I think far too often we see players go directly into a head coaching role, and it's like, sure, you know, a couple guys you've played with, but it's kind of it. Whereas, like, I think you need to kind of get some fingers in some pies to really do a job properly.
Oh yeah, I'm genuinely excited to see how that team looks when things get going here.
Yeah, and another team that's got an exciting addition here is Valor, with Matteo de Brienne bypassing the draft to sign with them.
How does that work? Can any of these guys theoretically just, can you just snap, like, are there no rules with with the draft?
So we'll get into this when we get into the
true.
draft coverage.
We have a section
here
on this, yeah.
But I will reiterate what I've been saying on Twitter all week long, which is, I don't believe the draft should be a thing. It doesn't make sense to me. He's done what I think should happen. I think it's a weird marketing tool that they're trying to use to promote this deal that they reached with U Sports to allow U Sports players to play and then return to play at their universities. But then these guys just, they either get drafted 3 years in a row by either the same team or sometimes by different teams, like the
Batar sweepstakes. Yeah.
The case that comes to mind where a different team drafted a guy was Stefan Karađorđević. But yeah, Gabe Bitar has been drafted twice by Cavalry. Will
he be the first ever to be?
Like,
well, has he done his degree yet? Like,
yeah. So, but then another young guy. We mentioned Karađorđević there, but another guy with PLSQ experience is Mo Farsi, who has jumped ship, and you were mentioning it just a moment ago to MLS Pro Next, or Next Pro. Is it Next Pro or Pro?
No, so I was just looking at this. So, like, because I was trying to figure out how the pyramid looks now, and so I wish someone would make a flow chart for me. But the way it looks, there's two. There's MLS Pro and there's MLS Next Pro. Next Pro is basically Div 3. Pro is Div 2, so on par with USL, and then they want that to be the pathway to Div 1, which is MLS. So I think it is how they've set it up, basically. But, like, it doesn't really seem clear. Like, and I don't know, like, what's going to happen with USL, like, because a lot of the reserve teams were just in USL Championship, and then so some of them are going to jump to MLS Pro, and then some of them aren't.
They spent so much time restructuring USL to allow the MLS teams to join 2-3 years ago, right? Where they were like, okay, no, you can be in at this, what is it, USL.
Well, so now there's USL
Championship, USL 2, USL 3, right? And they were allowed into the Championship, but they weren't allowed into the USL, if I'm correct. So where the hell is Mo Farsi going then?
And with MLS Pro, it's all reserve teams except the Rochester Rhinos. Also, for some reason, are in that and not in
Jamie Vardy's Rochester Rhinos.
I don't necessarily have a problem with it. It's just I just don't really understand unless it's just all politics internal. But like anyway, I guess it begs the question. I guess we'll watch this season, see like, does Mo Farsi feel like that gives him the better avenue to like an MLS contract, or because from what I was reading, the comments from the coach at Calvary is basically like this wasn't about money. It seems to be more of like seemingly a stepping stone. But is the quality going to be that much higher than CPL? I guess we're going to have to see what it looks like.
Well, so what struck me as soon as I saw this announcement was a conversation that I had with Anthony Novak a couple of years ago, where he was kind of looking at joining a MLS reserve team in the hopes that someone would get injured. Because the reality is, almost without fail, someone's going to get injured along the course of a season. And if it happens to be a striker and you get your chance, there's your chance right there, right?
Right.
But yeah, I just don't understand why. I guess, yeah, why? But just a quick drive up the QE2 to Edmonton we go, and they still don't have an owner, although they put out an announcement the other day.
Well, it was kind of like a cryptic message, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was weird, and the reason, and for Alan Koch to be the one to, like the coach to be the one to make the release, seemed extra strange to me. But hey, who knows what's man? Anything goes in the CPL these days. It's the wild, wild west.
Yeah, you can't say it's not exciting, but yeah, I guess we'll just have to keep our ear to the ground on Edmonton, because I don't know like what's going on there. There's not a lot of information available.
Well, yeah, and like you can see just the desperation from the fans right now in trying to get any information, and like they're checking the TikTok, which I'm a big I comment on it quite a I'm real big on TikTok. But I understand the value of marketing to like 13, 14, 15-year-olds, and you look across the CPL and not a lot of the teams have even tried. York's
social media
the only
presence,
one who have looked to make a presence on TikTok, and like FC Edmonton, or Edmonton FC as they're known on TikTok now, which is this is the thing that the fans pointed out the other day. They changed their name on TikTok to Edmonton FC.
Is that a sign of things to come? Jump the gun? New ownership wants to spice things up?
What's our motto on this show, John?
Time will tell.
Time will tell.
Time will tell.
Going westward from Edmonton, Pacific FC, they win the league, and everyone says, thanks so much for the good times, and pieces out. The heck's going on?
Wild. Yeah, that was wild. And like, I don't know if you could even say, because like some people kind of mentioned, could it have anything to do with like the continental, they're in the Champions League like Forge is, but it's like realistically, like Pacific was going to be in CONCACAF League. You're probably gonna get more games than that if that's the reason. So I don't think it's so much that. It must be something else. But I don't know, because like with Mo Babuli on the way out, I guess there's availability up top for Campbell. He'll get his minutes there. Maybe I don't know.
We weren't talking about Hamilton yet, so thanks for screwing up my order here, John.
We were specifically talking about the Exodus. Where did they go?
Well, they went to Hamilton, but I didn't mention that yet, because we've got to talk about. My note here says Forge, everybody from Pacific in, Mo Babuli out.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Which is really the only thing I have to talk about as far as that goes. And I think you broached on it there, which was what I was thinking, which was Pacific will have games, which will be a great opportunity for a lot of players. To get some experience, especially if they can go on a decent run like Forge did, which isn't beyond the realm of possibility. But then for their top players like that to move on to Forge, I would have to think it's that same thing, that they want to showcase their abilities at that next highest level, which they wouldn't necessarily get with Pacific, but they're going to have that opportunity with Forge, even if it is for just one game.
like
Or
I don't.
two
Yeah,
games.
I
They're
don't want to look
guaranteed
past.
2 games.
Yeah, I don't want to look past that matchup. But like Cruz Azul versus Forge, um, the likelihood is that Cruz Azul advances, whereas with Pacific you have a much longer run potentially in CONCACAF League.
Mm-hmm.
But there's more to it than that. But I mean, to play at the Azteca, that's cool too if you get into that game.
Should be a ton of fun.
Yeah.
So then I think from there we should get into the MLS really quickly. So much to talk about with what's
we're already
going
out
on.
west.
Well, with Pacific, let's get right back to the Whitecaps. And the big news that my pal Thomas Neff was tweeting about last night was that Thomas Hassel's been given the number one job by the sounds of it, and Max Crepeau's being shipped off to LA.
Yeah, that was a real bombshell. I felt like everything was starting to settle nicely for the Whitecaps, and then now everything has to get thrown into disarray again. Not that's a complete, but it's just like Crepeau's been so solid, right? And then this, it seems to be.
But so they've re-signed Javian Brown,
yes,
who's a good pickup, and Jamaican international.
Kwame's in camp.
Kwame was there from Forge. We were done talking about Forge though, John. So
I like to be all over the map here. Keep you guessing.
This show is going to be all over the map, folks. So if you're already sitting here going,
no, this is obviously now Whitecaps. Yeah, this is now Whitecaps discussion. He's on trial there, and he's got a shot to make that team.
Yeah. No, I actually I agree with that. I think he absolutely does. And then according to sources,
sources.
Lucas Cavallini, in the shape of his life
Apparently,
now.
Yeah, hungry.
El Tanka, is that how you say it? El Tanka?
I am not the expert on that.
Lucas Cavallini. Great shape. That's what we got. And then they've got their exhibition matches lined up against Tijuana, New Mexico United, San Diego Loyal, and the Galaxy, as they're going to base themselves out of San Diego by the looks of it, which is cool because TFC are also basing themselves at LA to start before they move on to Austin.
And like who's even in camp? Like they've released and traded away.
Well, Kamar Lawrence was the last one I saw before I went to bed last night. But Marky Delgado gone. Hey yo, Akinola, he's back.
It's Mark Delgado, by the way.
Oh, did I say I said it the wrong way? You said
Marky. He's 26 now.
He's a man. He's a full-grown adult.
Yeah, I mean, I think out of all the names, that's the biggest loss, really. Like with Gonzalez, you're saving $1 million in salary right there. That's crazy that he was being paid that much money. And then Gallardo never saw the pitch. Oh, well, Richie Larea is probably the biggest loss. Yeah.
Richie Larea is the biggest loss. Mark Delgado. For all 5 of our listeners who used to listen to this and are still sticking to their guns and putting up with our nonsense. No, he was the worst player in the starting lineup game after game, consistently. Like, you're sitting there and you're going, no, but yes. You know I'm right. Like, if you had he's been the weakest link.
11, he would be the weakest one. There's definitely games this season where he wasn't the weakest one.
And I'm not saying that he doesn't have his moments. We all do. But his moments were not more in the direction of being awesome as opposed to being mediocre more often than
sure. I don't think he's like a MLS All-Star or something like that, obviously. But like I think he had a very specific role that he ate so many minutes.
He did. And the last thing I want to do is sit here and make it seem like I'm just bashing Mark Delgado, because he was a loyal servant to the club. He did his job.
25 appearances, yeah.
But he was on a lot of money for.
Well, no, I agree. What he was on the salary. I agree there.
I was shocked.
Well, yeah, like just like I have the salaries here, and like based on who they've gotten rid of, that's almost that's basically $3 million in salary that they've just shed with Gonzalez, Delgado, Lawrence, Gallardo, De Leon, Mullins, and Larea. That's $3 million. So I mean, you got to think that the other boot's going to drop here, because like obviously they haven't posted who's at camp with them yet. And all the content's been very carefully curated to show the same like 3 players that like, okay, we know Westberg's there. Haven't seen Bono yet, actually, to be fair.
Wouldn't be surprised if he's out.
Yeah, he's another one that would make sense to me. Yeah,
drafting Gravin there.
Well, yeah, and like now apparently Gam is the new like that's more important than real money. So he has like you'd think Bono has some of the most value in the league, like trade value within MLS, more trade value than Westberg, I would think.
I don't know. Maybe. I think probably because he's younger. You're probably right.
And American, and has an MLS cap.
Quentin Westberg's American citizen as well.
Is he? Oh, why did I think he was? Because he was just playing in France.
Yeah, he's got dual as far as I understand. But okay. That's why TFC signed him, was because he.
Well, they can bend around the rules.
Well, I think he's capped.
With the United States.
I've been wrong once before.
I love how I just immediately start. It's French American. So let's see. He was born in France. He has been capped for the U23 and U20, and he never made the full team. But yeah, okay, shame. So yeah, okay, no, he's an American.
Yeah, so he doesn't count as an international, but Fair, but yeah, and then TFC have. Exhibition. I'm moving us along here, folks, because we've got a very important interview coming up shortly. We'll get to that in a second. But exhibition matches against LA Galaxy and LAFC, which is good because they're based their camp in LA, so that'll be easy enough. And then they head off to Austin, where they're going to have why have I messed up my notes here? Games against Austin FC, Chicago, Houston, and then Sporting Kansas City. So nothing.
But then we'll have to see some players
there. I don't think.
Yeah.
Like not.
Oh no.
It's still preseason, so I'm not getting my hopes up for anything too exciting happening there. Just an opportunity to work through some stuff and get themselves ready for the beginning of the season.
Mm-hmm. I think it's actually going to be a good thing for them not to have to worry about any extra games like with Champions League. Just get sorted and get going on the regular season.
Yeah, and then that leads us to CF Montreal. And we're going to actually call in a little bit of help here for this one. We're going to talk to former Canadian women's national team member Amy Walsh. She's a Canadian Soccer Hall of Famer, and now she is working as the sideline reporter for TSN Radio out of Montreal. So we'll be back with that in just a minute. So we're joined here now by Amy Walsh, former Canadian women's national team player, current TSN Radio sideline reporter in Montreal, and she's going to help us out in kind of giving us the lowdown on what's going on with CF Montreal this season, and then maybe if she's got time, she'll bless us with a little bit of input into what's going on and insights onto the women's national team and what's going to be happening with them over the next year, and the big news that's come out over the last couple of days. But first and foremost, tell us a little bit about who's in and out with CF Montreal this season, if you got a sec here, Amy.
Yeah, well, big departure was Rudy Camacho, who's had maybe a checkered past comes to mind, but that's not the right expression, but a little, tough beginnings and some red cards and an inconsistent play. But last year was a real stalwart in that back line and provided real veteran leadership. Didn't wear the armband. That was reserved for Wanyama and Piet, but he was the real glue of that back three for Wilfred Nancy's team. So with his departure, Kiki Struna as well, they've got some work to do at the back. But then, of course, big acquisition for CF Montreal has been Alistair Johnston, who for me has been a real delight to watch with the men's national team. Been real spark plug, real energy, physicality despite his small stature. And in the interviews that he's provided so far for the media here in Montreal, he's just delighted all around in both languages. So good beginnings for him. I'm excited to see what he does in this 2022 season. And then Gabriella Corbo as well, an acquisition on loan from Bologna. A right-footed defender, so he can slot into that back three, or if they shift to a more traditional back line, he could do the job in there too. So Despite two big vets being lost, I think that CF Montreal is in good shape for defensively, at least, moving forward.
One of the real burning questions for me that I don't know why I didn't ask it first was how are fans warming up to the rebrand?
Yeah, the rebrand. So for me, like, I know I was familiar as a 10-year-old with Montreal Supra, so this is taking any listeners way back. And then I've got 3 kids. My youngest are twins and they're 7, so sleepless nights and sleep deprivation early on, which meant that I wasn't really following the MLS or the Impact all that closely. So I knew when Didier Drogba was here, it was a big deal. Even, I mean, you had to be asleep to not know that he was in the city. So huge splash, huge impact, pun intended. So when they do the rebrand last year, I think that it took a lot of people by surprise. And then I think that a lot of people were personally offended, including the Ultras. And my perspective on it, so I was on the outside looking in and really sort of I've dove back into the MLS and into the coverage here with CF Montreal and really enjoyed it. But I've never quite understood the entitlement of these fans where they felt they needed to be consulted before the rebrand. And that has lingered, and there's been fault on both sides. CF Montreal maybe not being that forthcoming with their communication. There was an incident actually at a TFC game in Montreal where there was some fight broke out, and there was I think people were being belligerent and not good fans in that section, which generally is quite peaceful. And then they got banned. So section 132, the Montreal Ultras, their fan section, was closed, and the last game, the Canadian Championship, which CF Montreal ended up winning, primarily I think a sold out stadium, but section 132 remained empty. So I'm looking for, I mean, Kevin Gilmore has since departed, and I think a lot of that acrimony went with him, but there still remains a good fan base that is disenchanted with the rebrand.
Okay. Because it did not go over well initially. That's for certain.
No.
And I was wondering, because I saw the public facing imagery of the club being defaced and stuff like that at club property. So it was pretty eye opening, but not to be totally done without understanding, because people are passionate about stuff like that, and like you said, you have those memories tied to the Supra, whereas people have all these memories tied to like Drogba, Nesta, and all that. So I get it, but it's interesting to watch from afar, I guess. So beyond that, I wanted to ask you a little bit about this preseason that Montreal have on the go, because they're starting things off with a real bang, going out after the MLS Cup champions. So tell me a little bit about what they've got lined up and what your kind of expectations are for what they're going to be doing with this.
Yeah, well, right now they're training at the Olympic Stadium, and they've been pretty active. I mean, like all teams who are training right now in this current climate, they've got lots of players in COVID protocol. So despite sort of a full roster back, they're struggling with, keeping players sort of in the lineup per se, or just healthy and available to be fit and to participate. And then they'll move to Orlando, I think on February 3rd. And then, they'll be in Orlando on February 3rd, and then going there on the 27th with that first game against New York City on the 29th. So I think that'll be a real big test early on for them. And I think this team showed the potential, both in the coaching and the trust the team put in the system and their willingness to commit to it. And I think that they have the personnel to do it. So it's just about execution and finding the right people to fit into those spots where Nancy really asks a lot. If they stick to kind of similar tactics as last season, asks a lot of those wing backs. So last year it was mostly Broguillard and Chouanière. But it'll be interesting with Miljevic maybe back in and being able to play 90 minutes, or the capacity at least. And a guy like Lapalainen maybe being sort of a true winger type, being able to pair up with Torres being inverted or not. and then having a healthy Mason Toy, who right now isn't participating in training, or he's just sort of off to the side. That shoulder isn't quite ready for contact yet. But I mean, he remained the leading scorer for CF Montreal until quite late in the season when Kyoto passed him. So it's going to be interesting to see them with a potent attack, or at least the ability to really put the ball in the back of the net, and to see where that brings them. So I think they'll be in for a tough test right off the hop. And then they'll be able to ramp it up quickly, because they're going to need to, with that contest in the Champions League is going to be coming up pretty quick for them after the preseason games.
Yeah, they have Santos Laguna, here, if I just check my calendar correctly.
Yeah,
Santos
on the
Laguna,
15th.
And yeah, it seems like things really are getting tight in that area for everyone, especially as preseason ramps up. But as we look ahead at the schedule of games that are coming up, there was a big announcement as far as the women's national team goes. Not just simply the announcement that came out about Stephanie Lebey's retirement yesterday, but for me, that's obviously big news, and we can get to that in a second. But I really wanted to ask you about the Arnold Clark Cup, which is this new tournament that's being set up in the UK. What do you know about that? And what's kind of your understanding of what that's going to be about? Because it strikes me that we often see these tournaments that are put together almost showcases for the women in this time of year, right? As kind of warm-ups. We've got the Algarve Cup. We've got, what was it, the Peace Cup?
She Believes Cup,
She
I think,
Believes
as well.
Cup. Yeah. Is this kind of in that similar vein then, do you think? Or like, tell me what you know, I guess.
Yeah, well, I think it is, just given the time frame that it's in. I participated in, I think, 4 Algarve Cups, and they were always great competition. They were one of the sort of the coveted competitions at the time, because there really wasn't much happening in the international calendar. And certainly back, when I played in from 1998 until about 2009, the reps that we were getting in terms of friendlies, just you can't compare to the way it is today. It's a much more professional kind of environment for the national team players. But yeah, this Arnold Clark Cup seems like it's a big deal. So it's going to have 4 top 10 women's teams in England, Spain, and Germany, and of course Canada. So I think it'll be a good test for our women's team. And then to go back to what you were saying, you mentioned Labe, but also, Sinky getting that made up award, in your words, but I agree with you, from FIFA, maybe them wanting to be on the right side of history to finally honor her with an award. But Sinky said it herself, like, it'll be interesting to see how they cope with people sort of gunning for them. Feel how, I might be botching your quote, but how the air feels up at the top. So to see how they respond to that, because they've never really come into tournaments being champs. And then I think also with the expansion, so they're going to be going into CONCACAF. I mean, a couple of friendlies, I think, which will be Labe's last game for Canada in April or May in the springtime, and then CONCACAF in July. I think playing these top European teams will really be a good test for them, because the expansion of the World Cup on the women's side to 32 teams means that there's up to 11 European teams that they will be fighting against in knockout stages, and potential, or group stage and in knockout stages. So it's good. It's going to be good experience for these younger players, but I think as a group, it's going to be a way for them to test their mettle sort of early on in this process.
Sorry, I had to mute myself because the dishes are being done in the other room here. I wanted to know who's kind of stuck out for you of this new crop, because for me, like, it's tough, right? Like, you watch, and we've all, I say we all, the older fans have watched this team progress and grow, and we're kind of getting at a stage where, like, Desiree Scott's announced that she thought about retiring at the end of the Olympics. Mm-hmm. She's re-signed and she's going to continue to play. But there's this tier of her, the Sophie Schmitz, yep, so on and so forth, that are getting towards the end of their days. Who's really standing out for you? Obviously, the Jordan Heidemas and Jessie Flemings are no-brainers, but from this new crop that we've seen come in, especially in the last year, who's really stood out for you?
Well, for me, I think it's hard to disregard Vanessa Gilles. Like you look at the way that she with obviously she has experience, but on the international level, hardly any. I think she had 11 caps or something going into the Olympics, or maybe even got up to 11 at the end. It's just a handful anyway, and to have the composure and the wherewithal and the I don't know what it is, like just like the character to be on that back line. And I mean, her nickname's the Magnet for good reason. She's winning the balls in the air, and she's tackling, and she's able to maybe not do the fancy things, but as a player who formerly as a defensive midfielder, that was my job. My job wasn't to make the highlight reel play. My job was to sort of get stuck in and win the tackles and win the headers and do all that. And so maybe I feel a kinship with her in that regard. But I think it's players like her who are going to be the real glue for this team in the years sort of coming forward here when they lose the Desi Scotts and maybe even the Sinclairs and the Sophie Schmidts.
I was also wondering then about the FIFA Best 11, because there's outrage across Europe right now because there's no
Rightly
Barcelona.
so.
Well, there's no Barcelona players, and I'll let you add in because it apparently there's outrage here in Canada, and maybe you can speak to that.
Have you not got wind of it, Pierce? No, I think it's fair. I mean, first of all, talk about the visibility for women's soccer and for women's sport in general. So I think that these awards, even though they're voted on by the players and the coaches, it's clear that not everybody is seeing these players play on a regular basis. So that can go back to the associations. We can point the finger at our own association and say, why are you not doing more to promote these women? Let people know when they're playing, when these games are broadcast, or how you can stream them, and promote it regularly. And then I think that all associations can probably do that a little bit better, and broadcasters can be maybe taken to task as well for their part in all of it. But I think the 3 nominees for the FIFA Best Player did not figure in the FIFA Best 11. And a player like Marta, who is, an all-timer, has no business being there. Carly Lloyd, Alex Morgan, like I don't really know how they managed to be there. So, and to talk about Labe, she gets beaten out by Endler, who is a fabulous goalie. And maybe made a name for herself against the U.S. with a standout performance in the 2019 World Cup. So once people seem to know these names, then it's maybe like they put the earmuffs back on and think, okay, this is my dose of women's football, and I don't need to know anymore. And maybe people within that are also guilty of doing that. So I think the visibility needs to increase. I think the investment in the game needs to increase. And I mean, how is Christine Sinclair not in that? And how is Stephanie Labe not in there? I have no idea. She should have won the FIFA Best Goalkeeper, and Sinclair should at the very least have been shortlisted for that award.
So we're dipping into your wealth of knowledge here with the women's national team. And so I've got the inside scoop about when you were with the team, and I understand that you were quite the prankster from one of your former roommates who I just happen to know fairly well.
Yeah.
So
I heard you know somebody.
You'll have to tell us what a leaner is, and who you happen to hit with one of those wonderful pranks by the sounds of it.
Oh gosh, I think we were at a tournament in Boston, and we were bored, and you can see the hockey board behind me, and there's 2 different boards there, board. But my husband's a former pro hockey player, and he would regale me with stories of pranks in the hockey world. And one of them was a leaner, and my sister Cindy was on the team at the time as well, and she's always a gamer or up for some fun. So you take the wastebasket from your hotel room and you fill it a quarter or halfway full with water, and you lean it on, in this case, Ian Bridge, assistant coach, Bridgie, shout out to Bridgie, and you knock on his door, with the wastebasket tilted, and as they open the door, the water cascades into their room. So this was this is a leaner, and we probably hit Evan, Pellerud, Bridgie, most of the staff, and I don't think we got any of the girls. I think it was mostly reserved for staff. But that's a leaner.
Okay, so I understand that once upon a time someone put my sister up to putting a banana slug on Charmaine Hooper's door, and for whatever reason, as a 15-year-old, she was like, "Oh, this is a good idea." And from what I understand, Charmaine was not having it for a second. What's the worst you've seen a prank go wrong?
Actually, to talk about my sister again, this went wrong, but it like really briefly, and then it's a happy ending. So I mentioned the Algarve Cup before. And so when we were there, and Cindy was on a national team for a couple of years when I was there, early 2000s. And we were in Portugal, as I said, the Algarve Cup. And so it's just a beautiful, picturesque little village. So we walked down from the hotel, and there's a little bank, there's an ATM, little teller. And who should be there but Evan? So I'm with my sister. I don't know if, Cara was probably there. I don't know if I was with her, but a few other girls in the team. And we noticed that Evan's there because everybody's wearing their Canada kit. And so he's at the ATM, and Cindy, my sister, goes up behind him, and she does the old movie trick where you've got your hand shaped like a gun, you put in your pocket, and she comes up behind him. She's like, "Give me all your money." And Evan freaks out, says something in Norwegian, hands go up, and turns around and notices that it's Cindy. And his eyes he was perplexed and everything, but then he saw the humor in it, and he laughed and everything. So as far as things going wrong, though, I mean, Cindy happened to not be with the national team program shortly thereafter, but I don't think it was it wasn't due to the prank. And I'm sure, Pierce, I gave you the tamest one, because there are some that I can't share with you.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing your time with us. This has been absolutely fantastic, and hopefully we'll be able to have you back on again soon. Want to wish you the best of luck with everything going on in Quebec right now as far as COVID goes, and how that's all working out. And hopefully we'll be able to chat with you again here in the near future.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It was a real treat.
All right, guys. Well, welcome back. We're here with I think this is the 4th segment of this show. We're going a little long to kick things off on our debut for season 3, but we're joined here by Colin Elmes, Will Cormac, and Chris Corrigan, all associated with TSS Rovers. Colin's the sporting director and technical director. Will is the head coach of the men's team, and Chris is the co-founder of the Spirit of the Rovers Trust, which has just done their initial public offering for shares in the club. And we were joking about this earlier, that I'm going to have to abdicate myself from this interview because I happen to be a part owner. So I'll let John kick off with the first question here in the spirit of that.
Oh, definitely. Well, first of all, it's super exciting. You guys are kind of like breaking new ground. So in terms of North America, at least, so what do you guys have kind of in terms of your vision to kind of get this off the ground?
Go ahead, Chris.
Well, from the supporter side, I think I would say that, from the very beginning, this club has been completely inclusive of supporter voices, and it started with a tweet and a tailgate. I'm not even sure. I think it was Stevie that got the Swan Guardians Twitter handle. And as soon as the Colin and Will and Brendan had announced that they were starting play back in 2017, this tweet appeared. And it was like a bat signal for those of us that really wanted to get back to Swan Guard and stand in the South End and feed on the grass and sing for football. And we showed up at a tailgate, and there were like 3 people there. And then, our opponents, Lane United, the Red Aces of Lane United, showed up, and they brought the beer. I mean, we didn't know how to do any of this. But from the very beginning, after the first sort of pregame training session, looking over and watching the players picking up the bleachers and building the supporters section in the South Side. And I was like, oh, something's really happening here. you know. And once the club got wind that there was going to be a supporter culture around them for their first year in PDL, it just became like that. And it's been this ride. The very first launch party we had in 2017, people were already talking about creating a supporters trust for this, and that we got to do this, and we got to make this club sustainable, and we got to bring this ethic of inclusion and community and real ownership. We've got to bring this to bear on what we're doing. And so we worked at it for a long time. We talked about it for a few years. We took a run at creating a community co-op to fund the club, and that, you know, wasn't understandable to enough people to really make it go. So we sort of shelved that idea. And then when the pandemic hit, we thought, all right, maybe we could do this. And the club and the supporters really, I mean, we've been in this together. We're like this, doing this work. I mean, it's fantastic. But that's where it all began, and it's a testament, I think, to Rovers and to TSS, that from the beginning we've been looking at ways that supporters could really own what we're doing here. And, you know, we're behind our players. We, you know, if you follow the Swan Guardians Twitter account, you'll know we follow all of our players as they go through pro leagues, as they go into the college leagues, as they start playing for our national teams. Like, it's really meaningful, the kinds of relationships and connections we have. And this is a logical extension of that.
So what I want to know, even though I'm breaking protocol here by asking questions, is how did that initial conversation go? Because, like, I'm just, forgive me for my insider knowledge here, but I feel like the Tragically Hip are playing, you're sitting on like a back porch, knocking back some 49th parallel beers, and like, you guys just looked at each other and went, yeah, this is the right idea. Like, let's do this. Am I close, or like, how did that conversation come about where the supporters got in touch with Will and Colin here and we're like, yeah, this is what we want to do? Are you game?
I'll take that one. I mean, it's very, like, I'll isolate it down to a couple things. So really, you know, the vision from day one has been player development, but on top of that, staff development, continuing to kind of come back to where, when Colin and I were growing up, 50% of the national team or more were from BC, and that kind of went away. So we've been trying to find ways to get a pathway back. But really what happened was, we were ultimately, forget about this Super League type of shit. Like, we don't want any of that. Like, we want to create grassroots, real development and build with people. That's what we want to do. We want to build with people. So, I mean, we had no idea about the Swan Guardians. I mean, I think some of the Swan Guardians didn't have any idea about the Swan Guardians. So I will tell you an honest to goodness story. A former president of the Southsiders emailed me and said he wanted to meet. I went to, he wanted to meet in Burnaby near Swangard. So I went and I met a gentleman at the back of an IHOP who said, we are going to get together and we're going to send messages out to the people, and we want to come back, but we have some demands. And I'd never met Chris before at that point, and it wasn't Chris. And I will remove the guy's name for this time, but we want to make sure there's, you know, recycling bins, and we want to be able to have a porta potty down there. We need stands. And I was just, you know, at the end of the day, there was just me and Colin. And so we just kept saying, sure, but you got to help. You got to help. If you want to do it, you got to help. We'll do everything we can, because we believe in what you guys are trying to accomplish. And ultimately, I think that comes down to, you know, whether it's MLS teams or any teams in our country, is we don't really care about power or control. We don't think that this world is about power and control. We think it's about giving, and community. So it was one of the funniest meetings I ever had, but I just kept saying yes. And all I kept saying at the end was just, you know, as long as we're all not assholes, we're going to have a great time. And don't burn the stadium down.
Don't burn the stadium down.
Don't burn the stadium down. That was the key one.
Yeah.
And so everybody was like, yep, okay, that sounds cool to us.
Yeah.
And away we went.
And just on top of that, I think, you know, from a practical perspective for us, as an organization, we were still outside the pathway. And frankly, we were looking to create our own. And we knew, because we've been around the game for a very long time, that the 18 to 23-year-old age bracket was not and has not been dealt with very well. You know, players would just go into the wilderness after their youth if they weren't, you know, with the Whitecaps, or they weren't in the national team program. You know, obviously they had the route to go to university, but there was a huge gap there. And so those two things, on top of all the stuff that's already been explained, were two sort of driving mechanisms for us to get involved. And funny enough, we actually ended up, about a month after we decided to do this and it got into the public domain, we actually got pulled into a meeting in downtown Vancouver, where there were, I won't name the names, but there were a number of CPL people there. And we sat down and I was enjoying a $45 eggs Benedict at a very fancy hotel in downtown Vancouver. And after the introductions and stuff, I said, I have no idea why we're sitting here. We have no money. and they said, well, we've been told to talk to you because you guys know what you're doing. Sigma told us that we needed to come talk to you guys. And we laughed and we said, well, we're a month into this. And yeah, if you want to talk youth soccer development, we got hours of the day to go through that. But frankly, we've never done this before. And so it was kind of sort of like, oh, okay, and we ate our breakfast and chatted a bit more about football and kind of moved on. So fascinating stuff.
So the initial reception to the idea of fan ownership was a pretty easy, quick conversation then?
Yeah, I mean, it was everybody, coincidence, whatever you want to call it, but like-minded people came together, and it was an easy conversation. What was difficult was finding the right mechanism.
Yeah.
Hey, we want this to look like Germany or Europe or AFC Wimbledon or Detroit FC or whatever that version is you can think of in your mind. I mean, Fonzie, he plays for a club that's 51% owned by the fans. Just is what it is. Not many people know that because that's not what they're used to. In fact, what's resonated most is the Green Bay Packers, believe it or not. We say the Green Bay Packers and people go, oh, I know about that. Like, oh, okay, cool. That's what you're doing. Great. But it is what it is around our circles. When we came together with the supporters and sat down and had some beverages, everybody was aligned. It took till the pandemic to kind of come up with the right structure. And quite frankly, we bumped into, again, inside of our own youth club, a gentleman who's, a top lawyer, dedicated soccer nerd like the rest of us, and a mergers and acquisition lawyer who just said, we got to do it this way, this way, this way, this way. And we said, you're coming to the board meeting. Let's go. This is the same guy that was one of the first people to give us some sponsorship before we even knew his kid. So he was sitting there watching at Swangard. And I think it was just, again, like Chris says about watching us move, players move benches. He was in that same movement from the very beginning. So when it came down to it, we said, hey, do you want to help us get this over the line? He jumped in and, so everybody was aligned to the idea of let's do this. We want to be a part of, a movement.
Sorry, just as a heads up, if anybody else wants to bring their dog in here so I don't feel like Jane Fonda in that Norm Macdonald interview.
Mine's behind me. She's asleep.
I had a third child. I had a third child instead of a dog. It was
Pierce,
I have 3 children.
I just want to add on to I think what Will's saying, because I think the will has always been there to do it. And again, we tried one structure that didn't, that wasn't going to go anywhere. We tried this other one is this is the one that's taking off. But I think that, it's beyond that. There's such a desire right now. I mean, we hear the women calling. Christine Sinclair was calling again today for investment in the pro game. And this is investment in the pro game. What we're doing here, this is a semi-pro league, League One BC. People want to be able to contribute. And we can sit around waiting for somebody to float $100 million NWSL franchise, and that's good. Like, please do it. Like, or set up a pro league in Canada for the women. But if you're just like us, how do I get involved, right? Like, I can go to games, I can buy tickets, I can buy merch, sure, but how do I get involved as an investor? And that's partly what this represents as well. And we've got close to 200 people now who've decided that that's for them. You know, like, I want to make a tangible difference in the game. I want to make a contribution to the development of women and men in this country. And it's going to happen at this level. We're not just going to parachute big pro teams in and suddenly develop our talent. We need to develop it at every level, and giving people an opportunity to invest and meaningfully own a piece of that. That's just like a huge missing piece of the puzzle. It's great that we have supporters groups. I mean, I love being a member of supporters groups. I love going to matches and stuff like that. And we've got to keep doing that too. We want thousands in the stands at Swamgard cheering these teams on when we start playing in the spring. But to invest, like, here's the chance, you know? And I really do think, like, we're doing it. And if more clubs jumped on board at whatever level and decided that supporter ownership was a mechanism that worked for them, I would just be like shouting from the mountaintops that we've got a chance. So it's a next level in so many ways, and it's responding to the call.
And further to what Chris just said, we've actually had a few, and I know Willie alluded to it earlier, a few groups from back east start asking questions. We said, let us let this play out, because it's just got underway in the public domain on Tuesday, and we'll share the information with you, right? We'll share how this all kind of got pulled together, and so these groups are sitting quietly waiting for some information to flow their way.
I mean, really what we talked about, even in our package, our videos, everything that we've released, is that we are an infantile, immature soccer culture country. And it's not like a problem. It's actually just suggesting, like, even before we got on this podcast, we were just chatting together and we talked about the roles that we've all had. I mean, Pierce, you're talking about things you did at soccer games as you were building into your career. Well, we've had guys start with us at 18 years old doing the casting, the streaming. We've had, film people coming and we're going, we'll give you a shot, no problem. We've had brand new coaches at this layer, saying, well, there hasn't been anything to coach before. Can I give it a shot? Well, yes, we need you to, because if you don't, we don't develop anything. And one of those things, I'm always surprised that people don't recognize this, but supporter, if there's nothing to support, how can you be good at supporting? Like, if you're used to Canucks or used to the Maple Leafs and you sit there and you clap when the Jumbotron says clap, then how are we supposed to develop that as well? And for my money, if you play Roma Lazio, those players are learning what it's like to be an inferno. And we need to actually provide the type of support that you might have seen during the really good years of the last 5 or 6 years when TFC was crushing. Those players have to learn to play in front of 30,000 people. Well, ours is a development league. They need to learn to play in front of people who are demanding accountability from them. Whether it's nice or not is irrelevant. You have to learn to do that, because we keep sending people down to Central America and they come back and go, well, that's not the soccer I play on the weekend. And you're like, yeah, welcome. This is the real world, and we need to get that. So all avenues have to be developed. So we said from the very beginning, hey, Chris, all of the people, like, you're important because the players need you. Mm-hmm. And you want to partner with us because we need you too. And that's a really, really undertold story in my opinion.
Now, you guys touched on something there about the development of the culture surrounding the team, not just with the supporters, but having the live stream and all that. And this has been a very important question for me as an owner. Michael McCall still doing play-by-play for you guys on your live stream?
He will be, yes.
And Gideon, with any luck, yep.
Well, we might have to split those guys, because they've been actively involved with us, and they've been actively involved with the UBC Thunderbirds.
Oh, right.
who is varsity.
Well,
so-
I was going to say that I just am looking for assurances that my money as an owner is going towards digestive cookies for Michael.
Yeah, that's how we pay him.
What assurances do I have from you now that I've got the three of you here?
Chris,
he's actually
Chris
held us
Corrigan.
for ransom on a number of things. So, and the digestive cookies were one of them. So
Surprising, he didn't ask us if we like chocolate digestives when he interviewed us.
Yeah.
earlier in the week.
Parallel 49 is making a new lager, digestive infused.
I don't know if you're kidding right now, which is problematic for people who are unfamiliar with what we're talking about.
I got a 24 pack from Parallel 49 over the 12 days of Christmas or whatever it is, and oh my God, there are so many flavors there. I wouldn't be surprised.
I wouldn't be surprised. Well, that's the other thing too, Pierce, is like the amount of local support too. That's just like it's in the sponsorship, in the community. You know, I love what you just said, Will, about like building supporter culture as well. You know, we're all learning to become a powerhouse. You know, and in a way, like we've been gifted the luxury of a lot of years where Canada hasn't made a whole bunch of waves on the international scene, and now we are. I think we've all got to up our game, you know, including supporters. You know, we've all got to up our game around building the culture here and building all of the ways that we own the cult, all of the ways that we own football in this country. So the capital, right, as an investor, like as an owner in the club, but also the emotional investment, the connection with the players, the understanding of the sport, the nuance, you know, the literacy in the game as well. And the participation, frankly, like all of us. The other thing is too, like our Spirit of the Rovers WhatsApp is full of adult league results, you know, after every match. Like we all play as well, and that's kind of the beautiful thing about this game is we're all players, we're all supporters, we're all owners. Like this is a movement here that we're being a part of, and it's, you know, to your point about the way sports is traditionally marketed in North America, it's not sit down in the stands and clap when a good play happens, you know, and then wonder what went on down there. It's like we're in this.
It's not entertainment, it's participation.
Yeah.
And so one thing that you know has to be clear is today it's really tough to earn trust because so many things in our world have failed us, governments and you know, during a pandemic, it's higher stress levels and whatnot. And I think the fastest way to galvanize that trust, like a really difficult thing to earn in the world, is to say, well, okay, why don't you take an ownership piece? That's our way of saying, like, we guarantee you can't go away. Like, we're not just going to shove you to the side because we decided to change board or change rules. You actually have a vote. You have a say. And when there's 400 odd of you or more, you know, you have a really powerful voice. So to us, it's built-in trust. Now, lean in on the emotional side and let's build the passion and let's build the culture, because you know that we're not going to do anything stupid.
We hope.
Well, and even if we do, you know, we can't. which I think, you know, I know this sounds strange, but like if you actually really think about the blockchain and all these things that are happening, forget all these like apes and stuff that are selling. But the blockchain is an inherent built on building trust, because now you know that there's a guarantee that the transaction is real. Well, we in some ways have built that guarantee of trust. Pierce, you're an owner, okay? What do you want? What do you want to do? As long as you don't pick the left and right back, let's make a decision.
So I'm having the opportunity to voice well, you said 400 people, so I need 201 people on my side to overthrow the board and put myself in as head coach, is what you're telling me?
Well, it's a good thing. And we're, you know, not to take up too much of this call, but Supporters Trust will push 2 people onto a board of 6 and make sure that there's always the supporters' voice. They will gather through the trust all the votes on whatever issue is needed. And typically a supporters trust is built around the idea of making sure that the managing operators are accountable to fiscal governance and all those types of things, and are responsible back to shareholders. So you don't have to necessarily get 201, but you have to make sure that those two voices on the board are really, really interested in who's playing left back.
I think John had a question here.
Yeah, I feel like because it's such a new concept, I guess, from the North American perspective, and I feel like a lot of it's hard to quantify, like the success, do you guys have a way to quantify your goals for, like, you know, this year, for 5 years? Like, is there a way to look forward? Because a lot of it's about extending the culture, kind of like, you know, taking it to the next step of what's already there. But how do you kind of quantify your expectations for the next year?
Well, I mean, number one for me is the number of players we push up to the next level, and we start, you know, increasing the percentage as a province, not just our club, but increasing the percentage of representation from BC. So that's like the primary goal. Now, we will have KPIs that look towards the idea of numbers of people that are showing up to games, numbers of people that are getting actively engaged, and of course, you know, are our owners showing up to participate is a critical one. But you know, really, it has always come down to development. So for us, it's developing staff, developing players, and developing the game. So can we increase the amount of active clubs in our area as well? So we have no problem with that. That's good.
Sticking with those responsibilities, I guess this one's more a question for Chris. I wanted to know, as an owner who's going to be kind of an absentee owner for most of the time, I saw this question raised online. What can I do with my tickets? Like, can I give them back into a pot to be donated to the youth or the community? How does that work?
Yeah, actually, Will's been handling a lot of that too. Yes, giving is everything.
Yeah, we're gonna work with the Supporters Trust, and we'll create a mechanism. I mean, there's charities that exist already called, you know, Kids Up Front and whatnot, but we have a good relationship with the First Nations groups that we have brought in the past. You know, if someone wants a ticket, can't afford a ticket, we will find a way for them to participate, because their support shouldn't cost. And so we're not saying it doesn't cost money to put all this entity on, but if a ticket has been purchased through shareholder or otherwise, we'll find it a home. And quite frankly, the value of that person is actually greater to us because they're there, and that matters immensely. So, you know, we want to make that happen. But Supporters Trust will ultimately operate that, and we have, you know, we've been bantering lately about trying to afford buses and you know, venues that we can pick up people from. So, you know, it's I think it's just part of our value system in the end, to just make sure that there's lots of people there if they can't afford it, and they have a good time.
And we're really, really excited about the fact, you know, when we were in PDL and USL, you know, outside of our trip over to Victoria, all of our opponents were a significant distance away from us. And now, you know, I was talking to Chris today about this, having all of our Swan Guardians show up at some of our opponents' grounds that are, you know, 40 minutes from where we are. That's a super exciting part about what's about to unfold here. And I think because of that it's like competition in the game. It forces you to be better, right? And when and off the field, when your supporters are traveling around, like, for example, if we show up at our first away game and we have 60 to 80 Swan Guardians there, and the home team, who may be new to this, hasn't quite got, you know, that sort of stuff organized organically around them, I think they're going to spend a significant amount of time on that to make sure that happens, because it's all part of the competition, really, right? So we're.
I'm going to say right here, our goal in the first year with away support will be to bring more away support than the home support has. like more away supporters at Rovers matches than the home team is putting in the stands.
Now, if any of our opponents end up listening to your podcast, I'm sure that'll
Great. Bring it.
It'll
Bring it, because if we have games in BC League One, right, in League One BC, with 2,000 or 3,000 people in the stands, that works for everybody.
Unbelievable.
That works for everybody.
You guys are just talking about right now what is the most difficult part about being in Canada, and why League One Ontario, PLSQ, and League One BC are, and hopefully Alberta and the Prairies at some point, why they actually can be more valuable to the underground culture of building soccer sport is because you can travel. Spurs need Arsenal. They need them. Arsenal needs Spurs. Everton needs Liverpool. You can't do that when it's Montreal and the Whitecaps. Like it's so challenging because of our country. And it's nobody's fault. But these leagues that allow you to take the bus over to your rival, I really do believe that there's some power in these leagues, and there's some massive opportunity to help develop supporter culture because you can go away.
Right.
And I think that's cool.
Yeah.
So you guys touched on the move from the PDL to League One. And I wanted to ask you a question about that, because this is something that's been kind of swirling in my mind when I saw this. And how much of it was that you had your hand forced, or was it all a choice on your part to join League One? Because I know that Thunder Bay Chill were boxed out essentially by Canada Soccer. Is that similar? Were you guys given an ultimatum, or was it?
Pierce, I'm sure you're aware, we sort of dedicated ourselves to Canadians, right? Canadian roster, Canadian coaching staff, Canadian support staff, and whatnot. And so why wouldn't a group like ours want to play in a Canadian league, right? We played in a U.S. league because we had to. If the League One initiative wasn't here, we would continue to play because we need an outlet, and we know we're doing the right thing for the players and stuff. But we were always this frankly, when this started to come to the surface, I was like, good, like this is exciting. As much as it's interesting and fun to play the Sounders and the Timbers and whatnot, this is really about everything we've talked about this afternoon: developing the culture, developing right, and the reality is the more Canadian BC born players that can be involved at this level to broaden the base, the more Terry Dunfields that will pop out the top, right? That's just how this stuff works. And from a practical perspective, that league was pretty expensive. We had to fly to Calgary, took buses down to Salem and Eugene, and stayed overnight in hotels. And
had the supporters drive the vans. Swan Guardians drove the vans down.
They did on one of our trips, which was unbelievable, and it all came together at the last moment because of a bit of a quirk that we had to deal with. And so yeah, as much as that has set the tone for who we are, but it was hard.
I know I look 71 on this, but that was just because of the last year of driving to Eugene, 24 hours, and then turning around and going back to Eugene. So I'm actually only 49, but the USL was difficult.
We had to literally do that, drive down to Eugene and then play the Timbers, come home, and like 3 days later, do it all over again. And I just remember talking to Will, because he made the trip, of course, with some of the other staff, and it was like, I can't believe this is happening right now. That trips to UBC, right, or to Kinsman Stadium on the North Shore, or out to Trinity in Langley. Much easier.
A bit more bandwidth for our, scouting, all these things that are important for learning and developing in our coaches. I mean, Colin and I we got to dabble in the CSL, 30 years ago. That not existing for so long created this massive gap in just what people perceived as good soccer. You know, they might go out to a men's league game and think, wow, that's the greatest. And you're like, dude, this is guys training five-a-side every, you know, twice a week and drinking beers after. Like, you haven't been able to see anything. And so, you know, the Whitecaps, CFC, Montreal coming along, we always say at our club, like, we're really thankful for them because we got to take our kids to go see a game, but it's not enough. CPL coming, still not enough, right? Like, but it's starting to fill in. Like, we are literally at the beginning of starting again. And so all of these opportunities now are there for our young coaches to go and hey, you know, why don't you go over just over there? It's 40 minutes away, and you look at their game and give us an opposition analyst view of it. I don't know. I've never done that before. Good. Enjoy. Have a great one. Tell us what you think. And we'll just get better. We'll just get better. That's the general theme. Incremental gains for the next 20 years. And what Colin and I have always been about was building something that we can leave behind. You know, we're not going to be the best at it because there's going to be some kid that comes along, you know, a whole bunch of women that come along that we're hoping, you know, jump into the game and realize they can make a career out of coaching and operating and GMing and whatever. And our job is to leave that for them to take to the next level.
How much crossover do you think you're going to get from, and this is just an abstract thought I've just come away with, but like the VMSL is pretty popular. Like the free element of it provides for a lot of fans to show up. Do you think you're going to be able to pull from that now that the league's developed? Because I have to imagine there's going to be some level of crossover with those fan groups and players moving into this league, no?
Elmo, that's you.
It's an interesting question, Pierce. I've been out to a bunch of games over the last little while because we would go look at players and stuff. And for sure, I think some of the more marquee games attract a bunch of people. But honestly, a lot of the games that I was out at, there was nobody there, right? Players, obviously, coaches, you know, some people around the perimeter of the fence and whatnot. What you got to remember is a lot of that stuff is going on in you know, non-enclosed environments, right? Now, I know you're saying it's free and whatnot, and both Will and I, we played in the VMSL extensively as young adults and older adults and whatnot. It's been a viable structure with its 4 tiers. Operating over many decades. It'll continue to be what it is. It's an integral part. Just so you're aware, the first place that BC Soccer went when this was starting to gain traction is they went to the adult leagues because they needed the adult leagues on board. And so they met VMSL, Fraser Valley Soccer League, Metro Women, the Island VISL, to make sure that they were on board. And so I know one of the executive directors of one of the leagues quite well, and he's super supportive of what's happening. I think there's a little bit of territorial stuff that is going on about, you know, staying out of each other's way from a league start finish perspective, and we respect that and understand that. And so essentially this, a little bit of inside information, this league starting on May 22nd, and the provincial cup for the men and the women's amateur is happening on May 15th. And so, yeah, there is a common thread there. I think what needs to happen is this league needs to get established. It needs to prove itself that it's a quality destination, and it's obviously an environment that has standards, and that those standards are going to be upheld by the groups that are in it, and that the Canada Soccers and the BC Soccers that'll be overseeing this type of environment hold people's feet to the fire to make sure the standards are upheld. We actually all have to, I'm not sure when, but we all have to apply for a club licensing that actually falls between our national youth club license that we have with our youth side and with the pro license, which of course the TFCs and the Whitecaps and the Montreals, and I'm assuming the CPL teams will have to attain. And so we got some work to do coming up that will show that we are abiding by all the rules that are put in a standard-based environment. And so, yeah, there's a little bit of a difference there. Once this thing gets rolling, because of the standard-based stuff between us and some of the adult leagues, but we're going to need everybody's support here. We're going to share players. There'll be players playing in both environments. We have to go and watch these players play and look at them and assess them and bring them into the environment that we have, and do as good a job as we possibly can to make sure that there's some, like you said, there's some overlap there.
I've got 3 questions left, and I just wanted to first off say thank you so much for joining us, gentlemen. This has been really enlightening, and I imagine John's got 1 or 2, so I'm just going to rattle one off really quickly, and then John can ask his. But you were touching on kind of the standards based and the approach that Canada Soccer has taken with the PLSQ, and then with Ontario League One Ontario, the champions being allowed into the Canadian Championship. What's the status of that for you guys right now, or for the league? Have there been assurances that way that the winner of this first season will be allowed into the Canadian Championship? Or
I think there is a something that we're going to have to tackle. I'm going to suggest to you, Pierce, that the first season isn't going to give us access. I think we have to get this thing rolling. I think the biggest challenge, and certainly as a USL, Canadian-based USL2 group, we actually sort of poked around in that. The length of season is an issue. If you count the days from start to finish on Ontario League One, it's I can't remember. I have it written down somewhere, but it far surpasses the length of time that we are in session here so far. And so I think we're going to have to find a way, without upsetting the apple cart here, which I described earlier, to extend the season of this. And then I guess to some degree convince Canada Soccer that it doesn't need to be as long as League One Ontario, and hopefully gain entry in year 2 or maybe year 3 into the Canadian Championship.
I mean, if I can add to that, I think you have more force for those conversations. Those conversations are on the table. It's not happening year 1. There's 7 clubs. Okay, when you add 3 to 5 more, year 2, 3, maybe even 7 more, like there's lots of people knocking on the door. They want to see how this goes. But as you move to the numbers that Ontario begins to have, and I'm not saying we'll get to that many because you guys have obviously some population, but we get to a significant number, let's say plus 12. Now you're talking about a standards-based league that's pretty much soaking up every player, male and female, that's got even a grain of salt about them, with close to our passport, or maybe dual national at that point. And then you start pushing the envelope around, the theory is that, hey, that's momentum. We need to be like everybody else, and let's get this party started. And I think by that time you might either see Alberta start to join us, or a middle of the country kind of league happening as well, and then that whole layer becomes. But again, it goes back to the very thing. It's still immature, right? Ontario and Quebec a little bit longer ahead of us, but if you can get a whole layer underneath the CPL and the MLS, all vying for 1 or 2 spots, CSA wants that. Canada Soccer is going to want that. It's not something they don't want. We just have to be politically correct at this point. Prove ourselves, do work, but it's there. It's sitting there waiting to be earned.
Here's a question for you, Pierce, because I don't know. Did League One Ontario get access to the Canadian Championship in its first year of existence?
No. It took, what was it, 2017? Oakville won and got in for 2018. The league started in 2014. So yeah, I had a quick follow-up though, really quickly, before. I know I said John could ask the next one, but traditionally, British Columbia, the competitive season is weird for the rest of us. Like, it's normalized for you guys, but for the rest of the country, it's weird.
yeah,
Was there any
yeah.
pushback on that for this league?
No, because the universities are largely filling up massive numbers of the current, environment, right? Like they're UBC varsity, like there's connection to these teams. So they're like, hey, we can't really go there in that because we're already playing, against U of T, University of Calgary. So there's no pushback yet, but I think that as Colin alluded to, over time it's going to have to extend itself a little bit. And, who knows if it's going to, but my personal feeling is that over time, more players will want to play on the higher standard. And that'll push the envelope a little longer, and it'll be more aligned to what you see out there based on weather alone.
If this thing attempted to be like a March to like November, it wouldn't happen. It just wouldn't happen. Not at this stage. And then of course we've got the population thing as well, right? Where Ontario basically has 4 times the amount of players we have here, and so there are other players, right? There are players outside the university system that want to play at this level. There are players like that here, but there's way less of them. And so our window of play was restricted to what basically the USL. We're a little bit longer. The final game, 1 versus 2 in the standings, will happen on our BC Day long weekend. So we stretch into August slightly, whereas our USL experience, because we didn't make the playoffs, would end in the first sort of week of July. And so this league is extended a little bit further from a timeline perspective, although we are starting a little bit later than we had, with our USL. But yeah, we have to go and prove ourselves in this window of time. Standard based, right? Then you can maybe look to make it a little bit longer, and then go to Canada Soccer and say, hey, what about us? How can we get an entry into the Canadian Championship? Kind of go from there. So it's all going to happen in steps, I think.
Honestly, Pierce, if you got a burning question, we can stay with you because I'm pretty good.
Okay, well, I was gonna go down to Chris next, because we do have the draft coming up that John and I are going to provide coverage for, and I know you guys are going to want to watch because it sounds like you got a couple players in there. But Chris, I want to know who your expectation is that there's going to be a rivalry with as far as supporters go, because you've obviously got a team based out of UBC, so they should have something built in there, and then the Whitecaps. So what are we thinking? Who am I beating up day one?
It's an amazing problem to have too many rivals. I mean, we have some pretty fierce rivals in the Lakeside boys on the Highlanders, and it's such a unique and interesting relationship because we played each other for 3 years in USL2 and in PDL. We played for the Juan de Fuca Plate, which is a supporter trophy that's been traditionally awarded to the teams playing at this level against each other in BC. So Victoria, the Whitecaps were part of that for a while. There was another team in the Fraser Valley that was part of that for a little while. But we have a pretty good relationship with the Lakeside boys. Like, we're at each other's throats for 90 minutes, but then we're all at Pacific, like cheering on, Pacific FC, Canadian champions, and our former players there, right? Like, we've got Matteo Polisi there. We've got Jordan Haynes there. We've had Zach Verhoeven there. He went to Ottawa. So that's a great rivalry, and I think we've got a good history there.
They're also supported by Phillips Beer, and Parallel 49 is us. And I Chris will tell it better than me, but in the end, those two companies decided to put a tap in their own pubs, their own on the line for whoever won. And because we won, Phillips had to have a Parallel 49 tap in for like the summer. So we won that for them. That was sick.
So that's a good sign. I mean, this, I don't know how the Whitecaps support is going to go. Like a lot of us, we're Swan Guardians are or have been Southsiders. And we've got the south end of Swangard. So, I don't know. It's going to be pretty funny having Southsiders at the north end. But that's got a lot of potential, that particular rivalry, in a lot of different ways, and I'm really looking forward to what happens there. I know where I'm going to be standing for sure. And so I think we've got that too. And then we don't have established supporter groups for the other clubs yet. So Altitude on the North Shore, we don't know. They've promised food trucks, which is going to bring a lot of Swan Guardians over. So I think that's a good plan. But I don't know who their local support is on the North Shore, so we'll see. And then the other teams are university-based teams, and again, not sure what's going to happen there. But I want supporters groups at all of these teams. I want people, and I want people like bugging other owners to put teams in this league too, like not just university-based teams, but other community-based teams as well. But that's the established pantheon at the moment.
I will say I've been contacted by one or two of them to say, so how did this happen? How did you? And I said, I don't know. It just happened. Like I remember when on Twitter, when we first saw the Swan Guardians thing pop up, and I right away I texted Will and I said, what the hell is this? And he said, I don't know. And I said, oh, okay. Are we going to do anything? And he's like, no. Let's just see what happens. And so, yeah, the whole thing, it was organic. Honestly, it wasn't even like we were like, yeah, cool, but we're not going to go to them and give them directions and sing this and all this sort of business. So I hope that the other groups other than the Highlanders and obviously the Whitecaps let this stuff just play out, rather than going, oh, we need a supporters group, and so we gotta have a meeting and
No, I'll tell you how because from the supporters angle, Colin and Willie didn't do anything to get Swan Guardians started. It's a completely independent group of people. But what they did do was they provided inspiration, and this is a very meaningful club. Like the commitment to play Canadian players in the USL was something people had. Maybe you don't hear it. Maybe it's not like a loud call or whatever reason. But when that came out, and to think you were inspired by like a Tragically Hip concert, it's like, oh, look what Gord Downey's done for Canada. What can we do for Canada? It's the same ethos, and we had the same perspective showing up as Swan Guardians. Like, what can we do for Canada? We can provide an atmosphere where players are getting smoked out. That's what we want to be able to do. So it's about inspiring these clubs that are coming in at any level in Division 3, whether it's in Ontario, Quebec, or eventually across the prairies. You have to provide your community with inspiration. You've got to provide possibility. If you're just running a club through a development mechanism, and there's nothing inspiring about what you're doing, nobody's going to come out and sing for you. We have an entire songbook made up of chants based on Canadian music, which is great because the Tragically Hip does not lend itself to soccer chants, but we've got 3 or 4 songs that are Tragically Hip songs. But you've got to inspire people to do it, and that's what supporters will support. They're not going to support somebody who's just in it to, I don't know why you would just get in it to do anything other than inspire and develop. But give people something you got to
go back to that as well, Pierce, where you're just like, I just don't understand, and I never have, and I never will, especially with the advent of shows like this where you're your boss, you make the mistake, it's your mistake, you own it. Like, why would we ever want to control this game? Like, no one can own it. So what on earth are people trying to own hockey and soccer and football and in this North American style? It's like business. We must own soccer. Like, no, dude, you can't own soccer. No matter how corrupt it is around the world, we're still going to find a game somewhere on a beach, on something. And so there's, Chris is not going to try and control us. We're not going to control him in any way, shape, or form. But together, we're 4 times more powerful. We're more able to inspire, move, create by being together than we are by sort of trying to tell each other what to do. It just does not make sense anymore to be that way. And you know what? There's loads and loads and loads of people moving away from the top end of the game. I know we all watch on Saturday morning, but they're heading down, and they're heading down to their local to buy a meat pie and watch with granddad again, because it actually feels meaningful. And so for my sense of it is, I don't want any of these clubs to have people that are apathetic to them. I want them to get people that care about them so that they either hate us or follow us. Like, if you're doing nothing, you're worthless to the whole community being built. So that's our goal. Can we inspire another team to get something going on? Hopefully. But will we tell them how to do it? We don't know how we did it. Like, we're just doing it. Right?
Give people something to support. 3 years ago, we stood at Newton Athletic Park in Surrey, and we watched Julia Grosso playing for us against Jordan Heidema, who was on loan from us to the Whitecaps Rex.
Yeah.
Alfonso Davies was on the sideline looking after Jordan's dog. We were like, this is what you get to be a part of. And then when Julia Grosso scored that winning penalty for the Olympic gold medal and ran into Jordan Heidema's arms, I was a mess, because we've been on that journey with them. You know, a small part of it. We've been on that small part of it, but we've been with them in those places, singing for them, supporting them, wanting the best for them, and then watching them represent our country. So that's, you know, give something people to give something for people to believe in, something to inspire them, and the culture will grow up around you. That's the answer to the question.
Right on. Well, you touched on something I was gonna not ask, because I know we've taken up so much of your time here, but how much pushback was there from other teams that probably would have entered this league, but because they were told they had to have a women's team, they said no? Or do you guys know?
Yeah, I mean, there was a little bit, but not much. I mean, people who wanted to be a part of it, they took the information and went and either did it or didn't, right? But I think most of the people, including Altitude, who didn't have a women's team going, went and said, okay, we got to get it together. And away you go. Like, it wasn't something to fight. It was just something that had to be done.
All right. And then last one before I let you go here, guys, I need predictions on the draft. Who should we be looking out for that has worn the red and black here? Because you guys have done a pretty good job of getting guys into the league.
We're all saying Sagno, aren't we? Aren't we saying Sagno?
Absolutely. Daniel Sagno. He was one of our supporters players of the year in 2018. We loved watching him play. Absolutely devastating attacker. Like, some of the runs he made, slicing through defense lines. I mean, he's just lovely guy to watch, and a lot of upside to that guy.
Is Gardner going to get drafted again for the fourth time? Like, because he played for us too. So
yeah, he's got to be. He's just in it every year, isn't he? Yeah. Tommy's in it, and another club will pick him.
Yeah,
he'll go back and get a graduate degree at UBC. He's the smartest guy that keeps getting his way back into the draft.
Alan was his coach at Whitecap, so hopefully he gets picked. But Tommy and Sagno.
And we've had other players, like we've had Zach drafted. We had Mamadi Kamara drafted. Actually, he got drafted in MLS and then ended up getting drafted in HFX. But and Tommy was drafted, of course, in the first year. Jordan, you know, we've had these players. We put a lot of players into that draft over the last 3 years, actually. Like, way punched a little bit above our weight, I would say. So yeah, Daniel. Hopefully he gets picked. We want Daniel wearing CPL colors this year. And
Pierce, just so we can be clear, this club has always said, you know, these weren't our players when they were 6. So we're helping, you know, we always wanted to fill that gap that was there. Now the league is helping with that. So, you know, our job originally was to expose them, to give them that other shot, because they were, you know, left behind from other environments. Right. And so I think we're still in that boat. We're still trying. I think this year it'd be really cool for us. It'll be the first year that we put in some of our own graduating players from our youth academy right into our 24. So for us, from our own Rovers perspective, like, trying to build something for our kids to be aspired to, who are ball boys. Like, we literally have guys that are now signing for us this year who are ball boys our first year. Yeah. And so, you know, to us, that's the system working again. Like, it's starting to work. They were inspired. They came out, they ate hot dogs. They watched 2 minutes here and there while they were collecting soccer balls. And now they're playing for us. And their parents are in the stands, and that's pretty cool.
And I think that's what it's all about. And I just wanted to say, guys, thank you so much. Colin, Will, Chris, it was an absolute pleasure having you on. I know we took you a lot longer than we said we would, but you've been great with sports about it. So I just wanted to say thanks. And we look forward to following along with your exploits as the season goes on.
See you at the first trust meeting.
Thanks for having us, guys. Yeah. We're going to have a parallel 49 now. Talk to you later.
Well, it was great hearing from Colin, Will, and Chris from TSS Rovers and the spirit of the Rovers Supporters Trust. I think we can move on to the draft, the CPL draft, which we've just spent a good amount of time analyzing deeply, really overanalyzing even.
You know
all
who
the
I
picks.
feel really bad for is Charlie O'Connor Clark, who put in all this work to find out stuff about 40 players from a myriad of schools. Oh, man, poor guy. He put in so much work, and then everyone got drafted from 2 schools in the first 10 picks.
I feel like they could have given him the lowdown ahead of time, which 16 it was going to be.
I don't know. What do you want to say, John? What would you like to say about this?
I don't know. I feel like we were discussing off camera, kind of like what is the point, right, of this draft, and like it's not without any merit at all. I don't think I have like a better idea just like that of how to kind of like involve. I guess like the idea is like to make sure that some of these kids coming through the U Sports system can experience a pro environment and then not be worried about losing their place at school. Is that the point? But
I hope you're not asking me, because I don't know the point. And
I don't know. I feel like, as you've been furiously tweeting in the last 10 minutes, like these are all guys seemingly who you could just invite to camp.
Especially if they're from your development academy. Like Cavs drafted 2 guys who were in their system. Forge did the same thing. You know who got the real short end of the stick on this was Halifax. Because if they'd have just taken all these players from New Brunswick or Cape Breton and brought them into camp, first dibs, they'd have been fine. But no, now they got to worry because Ottawa's gone out. Why didn't Ottawa hopefully Ottawa was like, hey guys, we called dibs on all the Carleton players. We want to bring them in, which would be the only explanation I could come to that none of these guys from Carleton got drafted. Like, it's just,
yeah, like it feels like these guys, or from a bunch of them, could have just been invited to camp, and then they could use this draft pick on someone else who isn't from like the same backyard. I don't know.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Pacific drafted a guy from the University of Victoria and a guy from UBC?
Let's see. No, you are wrong. You are right that
second time for everything.
Yeah. Their second pick, Reese Gortson, he was from UVic, but their pick with the 8th pick was Luca Reese, sorry.
That's right.
From Montreal. That's right. So he was someone who we kind of thought was going to go because he does have some experience in the USL already. So that one makes sense, right? As a draft pick. Right?
I'm not going to justify it. Like I can't justify it. I can't, because I can't qualify it in my head to be like, oh yes, this is why they're doing it, because it has to just come down to emphasizing the relationship that they've created, the possibility for players to play in the league, like you said, experience a professional environment, and then be able to return to U Sports. But to have a draft because of it's like, what time is it?
The pageantry of it, yeah.
Like it started. There was an hour. It was an hour of my day wasted, like completely wasted. Like, and there was 1,000 people watching on YouTube, like almost 100 on Twitter. Like, man.
Yeah, like, I don't understand maybe the pageantry of it, like that it needs to be presented in such a way. Like, it's not really a draft in the same way that like the other sports do a draft, like by virtue of that, it's almost like they're almost like loaning them in a lot of cases.
Well, and
for a tryout, even
anyone who's listening to this is going to miss the great visual from the last interview where we started talking about the draft with the boys from TSS, and I just slid out of my chair and under my desk of just my brain shut down and bodily function with it, because I've been saying for about a week now that I think it's stupid and lo and behold, they hosted the stupidest event in the history of stupidity. Like, it's why? Like, people got paid to put that together. Do you know what I mean? Like, someone had that on their to-do list, like at the CPL, like, hey guys, like, we've got to sit down and really have a good chat about how we're going to present this farcical sham of a draft that doesn't make sense.
So then, like, yeah, like, what about like all, and like, what about, well, yeah, and like, I just also don't get, like, so there was like, what, 40 names more?
There's 40 names that Charlie O'Connor Clark presented.
Yeah, there was an even bigger list.
160 players who were available,
so
and they all got drafted from the University of Cape Breton. Like
3 out of the first 4. But like, that's what, but like, so what about why is it limited to 2 picks per team also?
Why can't they trade draft picks?
Like what happens to the other guy? Like, are any of them, because you could also just like Valor did, you could just sign a player outside, like the initial list had him on it, and then the second list they put out 5 minutes later with him missing from it.
And there's got to be a better network, like, for bringing and recruiting players from U Sports, or I don't know, from your own academies.
Oh, and no one took the
draft.
I just realized you couldn't go.
Yeah, no Gabe Bitar. A travesty. So
I
nice.
thought he was a shoe, and he's been drafted so many times before.
So nice, he's been drafted thrice. Yeah. Well, I don't really have much else to talk about, to be honest.
No, segment 4
really fell flat.
Runs out of
really lost steam once we watched the draft take place.
It did suck the energy out of me.
God, it was stupid. On that note, though, guys, if you are listening to this or watching this on whatever platform you are, please feel free to go ahead and give a -2 rating or whatever you feel like. Any rating is good, really, because it really works well with the algorithm. Engagement. It shows engagement. So feel free to tell us how absolutely terrible we were. And we'll be back next week. Unless, John, you last call here. You got anything?
Oh, no. We can.
Yeah, so we will see you next week. And if we're not seeing you, you'll be hearing us. And if you're not hearing us, you should be, because we bring such high quality analysis like we did for the last 10 minutes. And on that note, we're going to shut it down. So thanks, guys. See you later.
Yeah, welcome back.
Canadian Footy Corner.